Hi, everyone. My name is Tina. I'll tell you a story that I've never told anyone before. I hope you believe me. Well, I inherited a castle. You probably think it's cool, right? But there's one weird thing about it. Ghosts live there. Now, I'll tell you how it all started. I was sleeping quietly and peacefully in my apartment in New York. A phone call woke me up in the middle of the night. I picked up the phone and answered it in a sleepy tone. I heard a menacing male voice on the other end of the line. He asked my name, then he sighed and said that my Uncle Wolf had passed away and I was asked to come to the office and read out the will. In the morning, I went to the caller's office. He turned out to be my uncle's notary. He took an envelope from the drawer and began to read it. The will stated that his beloved niece Tina would receive his small castle as a gift if she spent at least, and at most, 1 week there. I was delighted to receive the castle. It was so cool. At first, I thought of getting rich after selling the estate, but then I started doubting it. I didn't know why my uncle decided to give me the castle. Of course, sometimes I visited him, but the last time I was there was several years ago. I recalled how I used to like to walk in the castle and imagine myself as a fairy tale princess who was waiting for her prince. So I thought it all over again, took the vacation, and hit the road. It took me a long time to get there. Finally, I was at the entrance to the estate, but a large wrought iron gate blocked my way. When I wanted to get out of the car and open them, the gates began to open with a loud creak. They must be automatic, I thought. I went to the huge castle door. I knocked, but no one opened it. This time, I had to open the door myself. When I went inside, the door slammed behind me right away. It must be automatic too. Then why didn't it open itself? That was strange. The castle was sunlit inside because of large windows, but just in case, I found out in advance how I could turn on the lights. I found where the breaker box was located. It was evening and I was sitting comfortably in front of the TV with chips and soda. And suddenly, the lights in the entire castle went out. I must admit, it scared the hell out of me, but I worked up the nerve and went to check the fuses. I had to go down the stairs and turn on the electricity with a flashlight from the phone in my hand. After that, I returned to the hall and calmed down a bit. I understood that the castle was already a couple of centuries old. Everything is old and probably such things happen often. So I got back to watching TV. I was watching TV and suddenly someone began to change the channels. One by one, they changed each other until the TV started to show white noise. I looked closely at it, and the features of a man's face began to appear on the screen. I got scared and quickly turned on the light. Then I rushed to the TV and unplugged it. I jumped under the sofa and hid under the blankets. I didn't turn off the light. That's how I spent the first night. In the morning, I woke up dog-tired, but everything was fine. I thought I had a nightmare because of what happened. Moreover, I was alone in a huge castle. I spent the rest of the day cleaning up the mess and finished when it got dark. I decided to spend the night in the guest bedroom. It was my room when I came there as a kid. It was cold in the bedroom, so I decided to close the window. When I approached it, suddenly something formless flew inside. This something began to change its image and became a ghost. The ghost pointed at me. I wasn't dreaming for sure. In the pitch darkness, I ran down the stairs until I was outside. Then I got into my car and I locked myself in. I looked at the bedroom window. The ghost was standing there. The ghost was wearing a bowler hat and a monocle. My uncle used to wear such things. I don't remember how, but I fell asleep, so that was the second night. In the morning, I woke up in the car. The huge door to the castle was open. In the morning, I remembered what had happened. I was sure that it wasn't just a nightmare. I rushed to the bedroom right away and started packing my things. I was scared. I was alone. But when I packed my suitcase, I stopped and thought, why should I leave? This ghost should go away. I was determined to get rid of that ghost. I had no experience, so I started surfing the internet. Some stupid advice wasn't the only thing I found on the internet. I saw an interesting ad. A team of Ghostbusters offered to play a ghost. It seemed rather interesting to me. Besides, it didn't cost a lot of money, and I had no better ideas. The bell rang at about 8 p.m. When I opened the door, I thought there would be a team of professional exorcists, but there was just two nerds on the doorstep who surely pretended to be ghost hunters. They were wearing the same suits. The guy wearing glasses entered the house and pushed me away at once. He had a device in his hand, which he had moved back and forth. He walked over to the armchair, and the meter read off scale. He shouted, "Here!" Then the other guy ran up to him and threw some kind of net over the chair. After that, they took it away and put it into their car. I was shocked. The guys assured me that they had taken away the ghost and he wouldn't bother me anymore. The Ghostbusters asked for a reward, but I said that I would pay them. The next day, when I was convinced that the ghost was no longer there, and also when my armchair was returned to me, he assured me that the ghost could come back only if he hadn't finished his business here and couldn't go to the other side. He mentioned that such ghosts were usually peaceful. Although it all sounded rather ridiculous, that calmed me down for some reason, and I went to my room and I fell asleep. But it got colder and I got up and the window was wide open and an inconceivable cold glow was streaming through the crack with the door ajar. I found out that the glow was coming from my uncle's study. Through the slightly open crack, I saw the ghost that hovered near the ceiling. He slowly hovered around the room, flew up to the desk, tried to take something, and failed, then flew away and tried again. I looked closely at the features of the ghost. No doubt, it was my uncle. I was so shocked that I staggered and fell into the room. My uncle's ghost looked at me, but I couldn't say a word. The ghost stood motionless. He tried to grab something from the table with his translucent hand once again. My curiosity finally overcame my fear, and I was able to regain my feet. Then I began to approach the table slowly. The ghost was looking at me. I saw several old letters and envelopes on the table and carefully reached out to take them. As soon as I took the letters, my uncle slowly flew out of the room. He was leading me somewhere, and I followed him. My uncle was hovering by the fireplace. He waited for me to approach him, then he abruptly raised his pale hand up, and a fire started in the fireplace right away. I looked at him blankly, and he looked at me. My uncle talked a little reluctantly, even when he was alive, so I had to read his mind with facial expressions. I did so now and got his message. Then I went up to the fire and I threw the letters in there. They started burning with an extraordinary blue fire. When the last letter burned up, my uncle's ghost began to glow brightly, and then there was a flash. It was so powerful that I closed my eyes so as not to go blind. When I opened my eyes again, I didn't see my uncle anymore. He disappeared and I went to bed. In the morning, I had no idea of what had happened. So, out of curiosity, it seemed to me that it was just a nightmare, especially since I didn't sleep well after the move. What ghosts? They don't exist. That's so stupid. When I went down to the hall, I saw something in the fireplace. I gasped when I found a small piece of paper and a handful of ash with Clarissa written on it. This was my story. By the way, I didn't sell the castle. I decided to keep it as a memento, and I never told this story to anyone. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy. Believe it or not, it's up to you to decide. Leave comments and let me know whether you've encountered something supernatural in your life. I barely opened my eyes and looked around. My eyelids seemed to be filled with wet sand. I saw the cold hospital walls and doctors standing over me and discussing something vigorously. One of the doctors opened the door to the ward and said, "Someone, she is conscious." My parents immediately ran into the room. Mom rushed to me and wanted to hug me, but the doctor stopped her. "She's still too weak." I tried to remember what had happened and why I was in the hospital. I think I lost consciousness judging by how happy everyone is that I was able to wake up now. I'm fine. Back then, I didn't know how my life would change very soon. Hi, my name is Bridget. You may not believe me, but I'm charging from electricity. My story didn't start in the hospital, but much earlier. I have been playing football for a long time and was one of the most promising players on the team. I just loved football. I felt real freedom only those moments when I was running across the field, and I felt my heart pounding furiously. I even got an athletic scholarship in college and dreamed of pursuing an athletic career. However, fate decreed otherwise, disrupting my plans. We were losing by a few points that day, and Coach finally decided to let me out to fix it. When I entered the field, I definitely caught a pass and ran into the zone of the Tigers, the opposing team. The nimble girl appeared in front of me as if out of the ground. I had never seen her on the team before, but I quickly realized that she was a defender. Not having time to jump to the side, I crashed into the girl, lost my balance, and fell. Having managed at the same time to reliably cover the ball with myself so that the opponent did not get it, I immediately felt the other Tigers players pouncing on me. It was so hard, as if an elephant had fallen on me. A sharp pain pierced my chest. My eyes darkened, and I lost consciousness. That's all I remember. I came to my senses only on the way to the hospital. After examining and taking all the necessary tests, the doctors told my terrified parents that I had suffered cardiac arrest. He said that this is very serious and that my heart can stop again at any time, so a transplant was urgently needed. My parents were shocked. To be honest, I was no less surprised. The doctor explained that any surgical intervention in the body is a risk, especially such a serious one. "Let us think," my mother asked the doctor. He nodded in understanding and suddenly turned to me and forgot about my physical exertion. "Your heart isn't as strong as it used to be." A few days later, I went to the school for one of the lessons. Thinking, I looked out the window, and the first thing that caught my eye was the football field. Frankly, I was incredibly bored in class. Everything I could and wanted to do was related to football. Therefore, after classes, I immediately went out to see how my team was training. I went up to my friends Sarah and Lena. "And here is our champion!" Sarah exclaimed happily. It took almost the entire Tigers team to stop our brief. Lena smiled at me. "Why aren't you in uniform? We have a training session." "I'll probably skip today. I need to gain strength." "You are a wide receiver, or do you lack the stomach to take my serve?" Lena hurt my ego. Sports anger started playing in me, so I accepted her challenge before I remembered the doctor's words. Easy as pissing, I dashed towards the field. Lena threw the ball very hard. That's why I had to try to catch it. I jumped a moment later and the ball was in my hands. The guys from the team shouted, "Keep it up, champion!" I didn't hear any of them. Sharp pain in my chest took me by surprise. I collapsed to the ground with the ball in my hands, so I was back in the hospital where I started my story. As the doctor warned, my heart couldn't stand the sprint. The doctor didn't have time to wait for a new heart, and there was no choice. Therefore, it was decided to put a pacemaker that would temporarily replace my own heart. The operation was successful. At least in some ways, I was lucky. I had to stay in the hospital for a very long time. The doctors were afraid that I would not recover well enough and all their labor would go to waste. Fearing that his words would fall on deaf ears again, the head doctor tried to convince me to be more careful. "Your artificial heart is a very fragile instrument. Do not allow overloads. Monitor the conditions of the device. Check the battery charge." He showed me a small box with a bright green light on it. It's strange that my life depends on this box. "The battery should not flash red. This means that it is about to discharge. In this case, you urgently need to connect it to a power source. The battery should never be overloaded. Please take this all very seriously. We gave you a second chance. Don't be silly." After the doctor's instructions, I was finally able to go home. It seemed that the artificial heart was working just enough so that I could breathe, move slowly, and eat. It's so strange to feel so weak as a young girl. Another disadvantage was that there was always to be an outlet next to me. I felt like an old smartphone discharging at the speed of light. To move faster, I asked my parents for their car. I was coming home late one night and my Toyota decided to stall. There were still about 8 miles to go. There was no question of walking this distance. I tried to start the engine, but to no avail. The car showed no signs of life, and then I heard the characteristic beeping. The battery! That's when I got really scared. I opened my bag and stared in horror at the red flashing light. The only thing I had in the car were wires, the ones that you can start the car with from another one. What if the charge remaining in the battery of my car would be enough to recharge my pacemaker? Survival instinct overcame common sense. I opened the hood with trembling hands and began to fasten the wires. I tried to open the squeaking box, nervously flashing a red light. Now I had the positive wire in my hand. I connected it with my shaking hands. My body was pricked with hundreds of invisible needles, and my heart began to pound as fast as it could. Even during my tears, just a tack on the football field, I felt such a huge surge of energy that I immediately jerked off and ran towards the house. I covered those 8 miles in about 20 minutes without a break. At home, I was met by my surprised dad. "Where's the car?" "It broke down." I barely made it. My breathing was getting short, and I really managed to get fully charged as I was informed by a bright green indicator. Great. However, I noticed that the box, which until recently was white, turned black on one side. Apparently, this was the result of my experiments with electricity. Completely exhausted, I collapsed into bed and decided that I would deal with it tomorrow. The next day at school, I was sitting on a bench while our whole class was winding circles around the stadium. Sarah and Lena ran up to me. Our relationship had noticeably deteriorated. I was no longer a champion, so why would they be friends with me? "Look, our former champion," Sarah giggled. "Why are you doing this?" Lena feigned sympathy. "She's a cripple." "This cripple will overtake you in the blink of an eye," I said. "Do you want to bet $50 who will run 200 meters faster? I will be happy to spend your 100 on something cool." Yes, I know what you're thinking. Bridget is completely crazy because she has been told so many times to be careful and take care of her pacemaker, and you're absolutely right. But I am an athlete to the core, and I am ready to prove it to anyone who dares to challenge me. Even at the cost of my life, I went to change. I wanted so much to prove these upstarts that I am better. And then it dawned on me. I remember that evening when the car stalled in the middle of the road, the red light and the wires which I recharged my heart. That's what will help me put Lena and Sarah in their place. I headed for the car. This time I did everything more confidently. When I returned to the stadium, Lena and Sarah were already warming up. "Ready to lose?" Lena asked sarcastically. I just cringed back. Our classmate Matt shouted, 3, 2, 1, and we took off. At the start, I broke away from my rivals a lot, and I managed to keep the lead until the finish. When I crossed the finish line, my heart was beating so hard, and it steamed like it was about to jump out of my chest. Another 10 seconds passed, and Lena and Sarah joined me. "How did you do that?" "It's just that I'm better than you. Now, give me the money." Lena handed me a 50, and suddenly she began to sniff. "It smells like burnt plastic." She pointed to my pocket. "Come to the city running competition this weekend," Sarah suggested. "If you're not scared, of course." "At a long distance, we will definitely take you." I shrugged my shoulders. Prepare the money. When I ran competing with Lena and Sarah for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. That's why I decided to take part in the competition. The weekend came. I was packing a bag for the running competition. My cell phone kept ringing. I wanted to answer, but I was already late. When I got to the stadium, I parked away from prying eyes and opened the hood to recharge my pacemaker. When the current started charging the battery, I felt like the Flash. Suddenly, a strong smell of burning hit my nose. I looked down and saw that the battery that powered my heart turned completely black. It was clear that this was a very bad sign. I made a promise to myself that I was doing this for the last time. At the stadium, I noticed Sarah and Lena. They were warming up. "We thought that you chickened out," Sarah smiled. "No, I was just running home to warm up 15 miles. Lena opened her mouth and was surprised. "I know it's not enough, but I'm still recovering." I winked at the girls. We prepared to run, dropping a low start. A shot rang. We rushed forward. I immediately broke away from the girls, but less than 5 minutes later, I felt like my legs were numb. My head was spinning, and I felt like I was about to fall. And that's what happened. I collapsed. However, instead of a hard track, I landed right in Lena's arms. She was shouting something like she asked someone to call 911. Her worried face was the last thing I saw before I passed out. I came to my senses again, already in the hospital. My doctor stood over me and shook his head. The day I didn't pick up the phone, he was the one who called me. The doctor wanted to tell me that they finally found a new heart for me, which was very useful because the constant recharging. I disabled my pacemaker. My parents entered the ward. I noticed my mother's face was tear-stained and Dad was unusually serious. He said, "Promise me that you will take care of your new heart." After that, Mom rushed to hug me and the doctor didn't stop her. This time, I took a long time to recover and get used to the new heart. I didn't go back to sports anymore. Instead, I became interested in drawing and I freaking love it. And what stupid things have you done in your life? Write it in the comments and don't forget to like this video.